What is up, guys? Bobgar here, and it's $10 deck time once again. We're going to look at a $10 modern mono black vampires list as requested by a viewer whose name I am stumbling to try to remember. I think it's Tom Slipknot1. I think I got it. We'll see. I'll edit that in and make it sound like I knew what I was talking about the whole time and I remembered, and like I have some kind of script for this. This front page is just bunch of random vampires that are in the deck. Let's get into the actual cards and kind of talk them over. So these are the early game plays. Vampire Lacerator is just a 2/2 for 1, which is a very good rate. It has the disadvantage that it deals a damage to you if your opponent is at more than 10 life, which 1, hopefully your opponent won't be for too long, and 2, if you're the aggro deck, you usually don't care about losing a few life off this guy. And we're going to try to be the aggro deck in most of our matchups. This isn't as much of an aggro deck as some tribals out there, but Vampire Lacerator definitely plays that side of things. Then the problem that mono black vampires has is it's hard to find another good 1-drop. There's a bunch of options that are okay. I decided to go with Viscera Seer for a couple of reasons, but basically the scry is really nice, especially if they're going to kill a creature anyway. You can just sack it and scry. And as we'll see later, the scry can become more useful with a couple of our other cards. And then we move on to the 2-drops. We get to Gifted Aetherborn, and I think Gifted Aetherborn is just ridiculously good. It's a 2/3 Death Touch like link for 2. It has pretty stringent mana requirements, but since we're mono black, it really is not an issue for us. It's basically a Vampire Nighthawk for 1 less mana that doesn't have flying. And I think overall, in this style of deck, you want to lower your converted mana cost as much as possible. And so I actually think it's considerably better than Vampire Nighthawk. So that's kind of like the early game stuff, and most of these guys are kind of pure beaters. I guess Viscera Seer gives us a little bit of extra utility, and Gifted Aetherborn can block if it really needs to with its Death Touch. Then we kind of get into some more mid-game creatures and utility creatures. Asylum Visitor is nice for a couple of reasons. The Madness will occasionally be important in our deck, although not usually. And its first ability, when you're out of cards, hopefully we'll be able to burn through our cards pretty quick. And once we get out of cards, the fact that we'll keep drawing off of Asylum Visitor if it stays in play is pretty powerful. It's a 3/1 for 2, which is a reasonable rate, not amazing. And we're running it as a 3/of, which is, I think, about right for the deck. Not the best vampire in the world, but it does its job pretty well. Then we have Gatekeeper of Malakir. Don't be fooled by the fact that it says it costs 2 converted mana cost. You're pretty much never going to play this without its kicker, unless you're really playing against a deck that you know has absolutely 0 creatures. If you're playing against a deck with 0 creatures, sometimes you'll play him for fair, or if you just know you have the win on board from playing him, you can play him for fair. But most of the time, you're going to want to play him for 3 mana, get his kicker, so he's really a 3-drop. Drana, Liberator, Malakir is very interesting. I like her a lot, but she does have some issues. She's weak to removal, and she doesn't do a whole lot if she gets chumped in the air. Fortunately, 2/3 First Strike in the air is very strong for Modern. There aren't a whole lot of Modern decks that have things in the air that can block that. So most of the time, if you get her down, and if she survives, she'll be getting in, and she'll be getting +1/+1 counters on your entire team. So she's a little bit like a Lord. She's not a vampire-specific Lord. She's a Lord for all creature types. Pretty powerful if you can get her to stick and get her to stick around for a couple turns. And I like the fact that she gives you +1/+1 counters repeatedly. So unlike a Lord, which only gives you them once, she'll give you to them every turn. And it might not look like it because she doesn't put the +1/+1 counters on until after she does damage. She actually does give you the bonus the first time you attack with her and those other creatures because she has First Strike. So for most of your creatures, she'll do damage before them, and then they'll get the +1/+1 counters and do their damage. And then on to the Vampire Lords, Lord of the Vampires. We have 4 Captivating Vampires. This is the weakest of our Vampire Lords. It's a 2/2 that gives all our other vampires +1/+1. Pretty typical Lord stuff. It also gives us tap 5 vampires you control, gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. In my testing, I never ended up using its secondary ability, but if you can, it's very, very powerful. So super cool secondary ability at very least. And who knows, maybe we'll get a chance to use it in our games. But other than that, it's just the Lord. Vampire Nocturnus is a 3/3. He's our best Lord. He costs 4 mana, and is super heavy black requirement. He has play with the top card of your library revealed as long as it is a black spell. He and all your other vampire creatures get +2/+1 in flying. So he's kind of a super Lord. I mean, a lot of our vampires don't have flying natively, so it makes our team very hard to block instantly, and it also just gives them this huge double, almost like a double Lord bonus when you have a black creature on top, or black spell on top. And pretty much, I think 2/3 of our deck approximately are black spells, maybe a little bit less than that, but the vast majority of the time, about 60% of the time, you'll have a black spell on top, and all of your creatures will just get +2/+1 and flying as long as this guy is out. And that ends games super fast as long as he doesn't get removed. So he is definitely the most powerful vampire in the deck. And then 2 Bloodline Keeper. Bloodline Keeper is an interesting one. So you can't see its flip side here. It costs 4 mana to put out. You can pay 1 mana to flip it as long as you control 5 other vampires. And on the flip side, it's a 5/5 that gives all your other vampires +2/+2, which is pretty sweet also. Almost as good as Vampire Nocturnus's, and plus it's a 5/5 body, which is really nice. So I like this guy a lot as well. He also has a nice ability just to kind of grind your opponents out, where you can tap him and put a 2/2 vampire into play. The reason I only run 2 of this guy, whereas I run 4 Nocturnus, is I think Vampire Nocturnus' ability is a little bit of a bigger blowout, and it also takes effect sooner. A lot of times you'll play Vampire Nocturnus turn 4, you'll have a black spell on top of your deck, then all of your other creatures that are already on the battlefield, which would probably already be like 5 to 10 damage worth of creatures, will suddenly, you know, almost double in damage. So I find him to be very, very good. So that's the Lords, and then the couple non-creature spells we're running. This is basically the rest of the spells in the deck. 2 Smugglers, Copter. I put it in with the non-creatures just to space things out nicely, but it's basically a creature. It could have been listed with the 2 drops or the utility creatures, kind of. A lot of times you want to put it out turn 2. It swings in turn 3 as a 3/3 flyer, and it loots. Looting is very nice. It can, remember that it does this before damage is dealt during combat, so if you have Nocturnus out, you can decline to loot if you already have a black spell on top, and if you don't have a black spell on top, you can use the loot to try to find a black spell. So it's pretty nice for that. We also have a few, I guess the only Madness synergy we have is Asylum Visitor, I think, but we do have a Madness synergy, and it's just a very good card. Night's Whisper is just a draw 2, lose 2 life. Again, just to kind of help us pull out grindier matches. You know, if we get wiped, it'll be a very nice card to have in hand. And Victim of Night is just a pretty good universal removal spell. It is 2 mana, but it's instant speed, and it hits almost everything in Modern. So I like that card a lot. Obviously, we'll sideboard it out in matchups where they don't have creatures, but in most matchups, it's a very good card. And then the land. We're running 21 Swamps. All right, next slide. Sideboard. I actually messed the sideboard up, but I already recorded 2 of the games, so I'm probably just going to leave it like this. It'll matter a little bit if we run into Graveyard decks or Tron. I forgot to put in Ghost Quarters and Tormod's Crypt, kind of our go-to hate against those. And some of these are good, but we definitely didn't need, we don't need 3 Goldra's Assassin. 2 would have been fine. A lot of these we could have cut or done less of. So let me talk through them anyway. Goldra's Assassin, we're running 3 of in the sideboard. It comes in matchups we know are going to be grindy, where they're going to have a lot of little creatures that are important to remove. It takes a lot of investment. It's kind of an overcosted card. That's the bad side of it. But a repeatable -2/-2 to target creature is also very, very strong. So if you can get him going, he's super good. He can lock out a lot of decks. But he's pretty hard to get going. So that's the big disadvantage there. Guldraz Vampire is a 1-of. I mean, not super important. You put him in if you want to speed your deck up. Especially useful in matchups where your opponent's trying to combo and they don't have a lot of creatures. Things like Ad Nauseam, when you want to, like, swap out your Victim of Nights because they're not going to have any creatures at all to remove, and put in Guldraz Vampire just to help speed up your clock very slightly. Feast of Blood, good when you have a lot of creatures you want to kill, running it as a 3-of. You have to have 2 vampires on the battlefield, but as long as you have 2 vampires on the battlefield, it's 2 mana to kill anything and gain 4 life, which is really, really good. Needing 2 vampires on the battlefield is a little bit of a restriction. Mostly it won't matter for us. It might matter in control matchups, but it doesn't really come in control matchups anyway. It comes in creature matchups, especially when they have specific creatures we want to kill and we need to up our creature kill count a lot. 2, Kalastria Highborn. I just think this card is neat. This is another one you probably could cut. It's a 2/2 for 2, and whenever a creature dies, or I guess it's vampire specifically, whenever a vampire you control dies, you can play black to gain 2 life, and your opponent loses 2 life. So, kind of a Blood Artist effect that you have to pay 1 for, but it does, double the damage and life gain that Blood Artist does, and it's also a 2/2 instead of an 0/1. So, I like her in the deck in the sideboard. Like I said, I regret that I did not put in my normal sideboard cards and instead just jammed a bunch of vampires in here. I think it was kind of the nature of how I built the deck, where I was like, oh, do I really have to cut this one? I guess I should cut this one too. I don't think this one's that good in the shell, so all of the other vampire cards kind of got shuffled to the sideboard, and some of them should have been cut for there, I should have put in normal sideboard cards in their place. Vampire Hexmage, I probably shouldn't be running 4 of, but is a very, very good sideboard vampire. So it's a 2/1 first strike for 2 mana, and it has sacrifice it to remove all counters from target permanent. So this is pretty powerful as a kill spell against, or at least a reduction in size against decks that run creatures that have a lot of +1/+1 counters on them. And more importantly, it is a good answer to planeswalkers, which otherwise we don't have an answer to. You play it down, you sack it, and you remove all the counters from the planeswalker, killing it. So it's a planeswalker killer in our deck. That's kind of its role in the sideboard. If we know we're up against a planeswalker heavy deck, it'll come in and it'll probably be pretty good in those matchups. And then 2 Vampire Nighthawk, not a bad choice. A little bit more life gain. Flying can be good against some decks. Death Touch can be good against some decks. Not bad to run 2 of them there. That's another one I probably could have swapped out for actual useful sideboard cards. And then finally, this is the whole deck. Almost exactly $10 on Magic Online. Close to 100, I guess right around 90 in paper. I think it's pretty sweet. I think it's pretty fun. I'm not sure how it will do. I think it has some bad matchups. Sweepers are a little hard for it, although not as bad as some other tribals, just because it does have some various draw cards to get itself back out of that, and you can also sack things to scry with Viscera Seer. And yeah, it's a little slower than some kind of tribal aggro deck, so I'm a little worried it'll be too slow in some matchups, but it has a lot of life gain, and the death touches should keep us in a lot of aggro matchups that have creatures, so I'm optimistic. And yeah, I'm going to go play some games and see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed the deck tech. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later. Hey guys, Bobgar here. I just really wanted to quickly say, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you enjoy my content in general and would like to see more of it, subscribe. I'll be coming out with more content in the future. And please leave me comments and let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, both in terms of production and in terms of my play and my deck building and all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.